take into consideration that while China, a developing country, already invests $200 billion in green technology, developed countries such as the USA don't invest nearly as much. They only invest less than half. So there you have it. Developing countries are already doing more for the environment than developed countries. So I'm Laura, I'm the first speaker of the negative team, and I will show you why developed countries shouldn't pay for the green energy technology in developing countries. I will first refute the affirmative case, and then I will move on to our case. First of all, the affirmative team talked about necessity. They talked about environmental necessity. Well, we do agree that we have to do something about the environment, but we don't agree on how we should do it. They said that developing nations don't have the basis of infrastructure, and they don't have the basis of technology. But you should know that, for example, China is the biggest producer of photovoltaic solar panels. They account for 55% of this solar technology. So there you have it. Developing countries such as China already have the technology. They already have the infrastructure to do something about the environment. And India, another developing country, is not far behind. So, moreover, this technology in developing countries is a lot cheaper than the one in developed countries. So there is no need to take the expensive technology from the USA, for example, and invest on that if we have a cheaper alternative already there in the developing countries. The affirmative team also talked about how the developed countries are responsible for the pollution. But in the cross-examination, they admitted that developing countries are responsible for their own pollution, and developed countries are responsible for the pollution they cause. So every country is responsible for their mess, so everyone should clean up their own mess. Going on to the affirmative team's policy, they proposed a transfer of technology in these developing countries, and then the profit made from this policy would be split up between developing countries and developed countries. But as I already told you, China already has this technology, so they wouldn't need the technology that developed countries own. And if they already have the technology, they could just take all the money they make from this green technology, and there wouldn't be need to give money to developed countries. So we don't need the policy the affirmative team offers today. Then going on to the benefits of this policy. First of all, they talked about incentive, that there would be through this policy they could create a global image of developing countries, but this is not a benefit of this policy. This is a benefit of the fact that developing countries are doing something for the environment. That's how you create the global image. It's not. Then they talked about the long-term benefits, and that the fact that technology remains. Well, we already have the technology, so this is no longer a benefit. Now I'm going to talk about the negative case. First of all, developed countries have enough trouble cutting their own emission, so they first should take care of their own mess. They should clean up their own mess and then worry about somebody else, because developed countries are already far behind in cutting emissions compared to developing countries. And because they have so many emissions, they have such big problems in cutting their emissions, it is clearly a priority to do something for themselves, and then maybe in the future, if there is need, but if there is no need, and I will show you that if there is need, they might have to do something to someone else. Another argument is that, as I said, that developed countries are not responsible for the pollution done in other countries. Developing countries have their own responsibility when it comes to pollution. Then, developing countries already have the money to invest in green technology and already have the technology. They just don't have environment as a priority because they are developing countries, so it is clear they have money to develop. They just don't want to develop on green technology. If environment would be a policy, a priority, it is clear that they could make this transition very easily. Then again, developing countries are doing this for themselves. They are investing in green technology for themselves and not for the developed countries. It is in their best interest to build their technology on sustainable development. So in the end, there you have it. Developing countries already have the technology necessary, and they not only have it, but it is cheaper than the one in developed countries. So it is already easier for them to cut emissions. There is no need for help from developed countries, and developed countries could not offer this help anyway because they have their own problems, even bigger problems that developing countries have. So please vote for the affirmative team when considering that. So please vote for the affirmative team. Thank you.
Good morning. You said China is doing much to help the environment. You said in your arguments that developed nations aren't doing that much to protect the environment. So shouldn't they do more through our policy? Shouldn't developed nations then take more action?
Yes, but they should take more action in their own countries because they are emitting so much. So they have a huge problem in their own countries that they should take care of.
Yes, but did we say that developed nations aren't going to do anything in their in their domestic industries? Don't you think is that mutually exclusive with our case? Because we're talking about a policy of the developing nations, and we never said that we're not going to do anything in developed nations.
Well, it is mutually exclusive. Why would a developed country invest in other countries when they are not investing in their own country?
No, we're saying that we should invest into developing countries, and we can also invest in their own lands. We're talking about whether or not we should do this for the developing countries, and whether or not we should do this for the environment or in the developing countries. And really, don't you think that's kind of not going with our case? Isn't that?
Well, cutting emissions is not so easy. And when we are talking of such a big problem, developed countries can at the moment cannot do both, cut their emissions in their own countries and cut emissions in developing countries.
Okay, and you said that developing nations have the infrastructure and technology, but do you know that in countries such as India, 300 million people are living below the poverty line? Are you saying that they do have the infrastructure and the money to take care of green technology before poverty?
Yes, because India and China doesn't have environment as a priority yet. They are investing money in a military or army and everything else in coal-based technology. They don't have environment as a priority. So it is clear that when they are developing, they have the money to invest, to develop. They're just not developing in the right direction. They are not investing in the right technology.
Okay, so you said that all these developing countries have the technology and the money, but what about countries such as Brazil and India? Are you saying that they do have the infrastructure and technologies, that's up to level with the developed nations?
Yes. Well, I gave you an example
Yes.
China having the best technology in solar energy. They have the cheapest and the most efficient technology in solar energy. They are
but
the biggest.
We're talking about all of the developing nations, as countries in Southern Africa, in the Americas, Southern America. Are you saying all of these countries have the same amount of technology and infrastructures that the United States has?
Okay, but why would South Africa take the expensive technology from the USA when they can take the